All right, today is the third one on the hidden psychology of influence. Man, we try to make it fun, fast, and real world, not, bury it in theory and dogma and this and that. All right, so let's have some fun with this. But as always, I always start with, and I've been forgetting lately, but start by asking yourself, what can you learn new today? Right? We already learned a little bit about anti-aging if you're sitting there listening, so you can always get something new. And what can I learn differently? Because a lot of this will be review because it's based in NLP, but at least it's my experience. Every time I listen to something or read it or look at it, I see something better. So what can I learn differently today? And what can or will I learn about myself? And as always, most important question for me, how can I have fun today? All right. So I guess we start with influence is not persuasion, right? You can influence somebody, doesn't mean you're necessarily going to persuade them. That sounds kind of weird. It's the paradox, right? But really what I want to focus on is what happens before you speak, right? And those of us been around this a while, we keep seeing these patterns come up. Where all these new coaches, new hypnotists that I hate to sound arrogant, but someone that I've never heard of, not that I would know everybody, but then they claim they've been around leading the field for 25 years. Why they always pick 25 years, I don't know. And then they... And basically, it's more of the same, right? So let's have some fun with it. And always remember, this is very basic in sales, as Bruce knows and Reed, is people decide emotionally and then justify logically, right? To get them emotionally invested, they'll make a decision, hopefully in your direction, which we're working on today, and then justify it logically, right? And so first we have to go with, and if anybody wants, when you're listening to this here or on YouTube, if you don't have access to it, there's a thing I did on pre-suasion, I think a year or two ago. Let me know. I'll get you the link to that so you can watch a whole course on pre-suasion, which was done by Cialdini. I think it's Robert Cialdini, who wrote the book Persuasion and a few others, but he talked about pre-suasion. What happens before you start the process? It's all in the setup, right? What's the mood? What's the location, right? Best example I have for this, for sales or marketing or trying to influence people, it is car dealers. A lot of them, if you call and ask a question, they won't answer unless you come in to the showroom, right? You call and say, I want the out-the-door price on this car, which technically they should give you, but that's neither here nor there. And but they're saying, well, come in and we'll show you because it's a different location. Location sets the mood. There's all these shiny new cars. There's all this other stuff glittering into your subconscious, right? It's also why they always put some of the most expensive cars on the showroom floor, and then one, regular car, if you will. So you want to set the mood, you want to do the location, and it's all the subconscious cues, right? I did it when I started doing this again. I outlined these few weeks of classes that I'm trying, once a week, these short 20, 25-minute classes that I put on YouTube, then break it up through an AI program that Bruce turned me on to that breaks it up into 90-second social media clips and actually post them to my social media, right? Well, one of the subconscious cues is I need to wear my logo shirt, right? And here's a weird example that goes with it. Some of the most watched videos when I was posting a lot, like Facebook Lives and doing the shorts, are the ones done at the barn, right? With the horses in the background, right? And I never thought about it. I started teaching, when I was getting ready to teach this, I said, that's why the ones at the barn go well. It's a different location. It changes what you're looking at, right? How many of the guys you see when you see social media, the personal coaches, they're always, a lot of them, the younger ones, they'll be standing next to like a, you know, real expensive sports car, a Ferrari, a Lamborghini, right? Or they'll show you the clip supposedly where they're at the beach doing their, you know, I'm working from the beach today. Because that's the location shift in your brain, the people watching you, right? And those are the subconscious cues that we need to be aware of. And one of the things that happens is when you teach this to people, by the way, a lot of people go, yeah, but that wouldn't work on me. Au contraire, it's going to work on you. Everything works on you, right? So anyway, so let's have some fun with that. But, you know, when I teach this, when I used to teach practice building and, you know, or building your business, a lot of us have trouble with, they'll go, I'm a great hypnotist, coach, helper, whatever you are, you know. Excuse me, but I'm not a salesperson, right? Or I'm not good at closing, right? And a reframe, going to the preset, is when there's really nothing about closing. You're just guiding the decision, right? And it softens it in your head. If you have a little bit of a lot of us may have this thing about sales or closing clients for self-help. If you just reframe it in your head, is that you're not really closing, you're just guiding their decision, right? Including, you may not be the best person for them, you know? One level of success is when you can turn down clients, because you know it might not be the best fit. And my last few horror stories is the ones where I took the person on and I knew I should. You know, it just wasn't going to be a good fit. They were too high maintenance. You know, it's like, I don't know about, you know. But sometimes an empty checkbook will motivate your decisions. Hey, anybody else? And
that was brilliant, I say, brilliant. It was until I'm doing a play. Big movements again, big movements. Not doing film, you know, film, play. Here's an aside about pre-suasion. You know, it's those little things, including, are you doing things to close yourself to a better decision, right? To get the attitude, mindset that you want. I broke out my comedy and tragedy necklace, right? Because I'm doing a play, right? And so it's like, it works on me, right? I act like it doesn't, but it does. Because it's all about state, right? What state do you need to be in? What state do you want your client in, right? Because if you're in the right state, that's going to drive the decision, not the other way around, right? So, and then let their logic explain it later, right? But if they're in the right state, when you're excited, you ever make a decision based because you're in a great, you're excited about something, you make a decision, right? And then you'll justify it, you'll do this, right? I was watching a guy talk on this one time, and he said the best place he ever saw this, and if you've never done it, you should, which is go to a timeshare thing. You know, where they stay in the hotel for free for 3 days. You just got to sit through this 90-minute grueling, but it's all, and I've done one, right? Because I don't know, something in Orlando, and we were staying at this resort, timeshare. So we went down to the thing, and it was all putting you in the state of like vacation, laid back, but you don't have to worry about it. You have your rooms when you want your rooms, and it's already set, you know, all that good stuff. And I'm like, you know, and again, I act like I know this stuff, but it's like, shit, I was ready to drop the way too much money and buy a goddamn timeshare I'd probably never use. Right? But they put, and I was watching their closing rate, and I'm going, they're doing pretty good. You know, they're, you know, but it was all about driving the state, right? And the way they were doing it, right? And if you miss the state, you'll lose your influence, right? You'll lose the influence. Last sports car I bought when I was into that, it's like, and the salesman, I don't know if he's trained in it or just good at it. He kept going, think about how you felt when you were driving that car, right? this goes back a long time, but it was a Porsche, right? And it's like, it's a different feel. And that's what he said. It's a different feel, right? And that was a great state driver, right? Got me to buy the car, right? Of course, now if I bought a Porsche, I'd love it, except I'd probably have trouble getting in and out. Like, yeah. It's like that meme video. They put the guy that he bought a Lamborghini and he got in it and he couldn't get out. Yeah, that happens. But I could picture the state he was in when he bought it, right? And the biggest mistake we all make, and practitioners are the worst, is talking too much and observing too little. You know, the guy did this really cool sales training, and he goes, what you're looking for is when to just shut up. You know, the guy that trained me in selling hypnosis, right, and how to build a hypnosis clinic was a guy named Russell Yarnell. And he built, he trained like Scott McFall, the guy that started Positive Changes Hypnosis, if you go back years. I mean, he's several people with multi-$100,000 practices. Scott McFall still uses his method, and it works. But he said when we were doing something, he goes, you know what the big problem with hypnotists? I would say this about coaches and change artists, if you will, whatever we are. He goes, they talk too much because they're in love with their damn voice. You know, people are, this is for a hypnosis clinic, but you could use this. People are changing you to lose weight, stop smoking, you know, start exercise. They don't give a shit about what you're saying. But hypnotists, and you see it at conferences where people just wax eloquently for 10 minutes and you realize they've said nothing, right? And unless they're getting ready to run for Congress or the Senate, I don't know why you would do that, right? But we talk too much, and you don't observe when you're losing the audience, right? So anyway, something to think about. But influence starts early, before the conversation begins, which the biggest one is, what state are you in? Right? What state are you in? Here's a stretch for what I'm teaching, but it's going to work because it's in my head for me, and it seems to work, which is, I'm doing this play right now. We open a week from today. And the director's really good. He's a professional, retired actor, director. And so it's a little bit different than a lot of people, but he's always mentioning, get your head straight before you step on the stage, because you're trying to influence the audience to have them believe they're in one of the real expensive suites in Washington, D.C. Right? And it's all about bribery, corruption, things. This play was written in the 50s. It's called Born Yesterday. It's more relevant today than ever before, right? But it's like, if you want to influence them to step into this world you're creating, you know, on the stage, an artificial world, you got to have your head in the game, right? And I think that's true for us in everything, right? Because you're creating an artificial thing in your client's head, whether you call it hypnosis, NLP, or whatever it is that you're doing. But before the conversation begins, what state do you need to be in? Do you need to be excited? Do you need to be depressed? I mean, just think like an actor for a second. You know, when you step on the stage, and I love this play because I have the opening line. It's like, what state do you need to be in to start to sell the story, right? And so what state do you need to be in, right? And again, it goes back to pre-framing, you know, like pre-suasion. You set the direction, right? Set the direction you want them to go, you know? And in theater, what we do is generally, it's like at the very beginning of a play, is you want a yes set. You want them to buy into, okay, I want to see where this is going, right? I want to see where this is going. And then we want to build, and this is classic sales, Bruce and Reed know this is, you know, the yes set, the compliance loops, right? One small one builds a little bit bigger, builds a little bit bigger, right? And that's That's what hypnosis is. That's what's compounding. When you look at the art, compounding a hypnotic suggestion, it's a compliance loop, right? That's why Orman McGill used to talk about start small. You're just not going to eat as much, right? Because it's a big jump to, maybe eating healthy, but you're not going to eat as much. You're going to make a little better choices, so it's kind of fun, right? And then the first thing, you want to do is usually a pattern interrupt, and it breaks the old state, right? So just to interrupt the pattern, anything can work like that, right? The classic one we see in NLP training is, you do a technique on somebody, you want to break the pattern after you're done, and you instead of saying, how was that? You go, I like trains. Because then you just do what Billy did, right? He just did his Dr. Evil look, like, yeah. It's like, so you just break the pattern, anything to break the pattern, right? And then that'll shift the state, which can change the outcome, right? And if you can shift the state, the outcome begins to alter itself much more easily. But it's always emotion first, right? And then the meaning. The emotion you're in, the emotion you're feeling will place the meaning on the whatever's going on around you. As our friend Tony Robbins says, nothing, and he got it from Virginia Satir, who got it from someone, probably one of the Stoics. Nothing has meaning except the meaning you give it. I think there's a quote in the Bible about nothing is neither good nor bad, right? It's the meaning you place on it, right? Say that to a fundamentalist, that can start some shit. But it's like, what emotion are you putting on it? What emotion you want them in, right? And to me, this is for hypnotists and coaches more than anything else, is accessing the feeling or the state of hope, right? Because I don't think this is talked about enough. By the time people reach out to us, and this is also true when up to a few months ago when I was still consulting in the alcohol and drug rehab, is giving them the sense of hope. People usually don't reach out till they feel hopeless, right? Can they even dare to hope? They don't want to get their hopes up. Have they given up hope? They feel dejected, I saw that Russell Yarnell do an intake, like, a sales client came in for screening, right? I keep defaulting to evaluation because I'm back in the psych world right now, but it was just a screening. And he would always reach over and say, you know what the sad thing is, Reed? When you've given up hope, you don't even want to try anymore. And you're sitting here wondering can I dare to hope that this might work for me? Right? That's like accessing that state that he could, and you could just tell if you were watching, right? That's probably what the client was feeling, because they went through, I've tried everything, Jenny Craig, Nutrisystem, the Atkins diet, the Mediterranean diet, right? So it was a lady, and she'd given up hope. And all he sold her on, the idea was hope, right? Does the idea of hope work? Do you remember a book called The Audacity of Hope? I think that's the name of it. It took a little known senator into the White House, right? And he sold the whole thing on hope. I think we're going to see that in the next election, or presidential. It'll be the candidate that can sell hope, not fear. Because I think, this is an aside, I think we go through cycles, right? But we want to hope, right? Dare to dream, right? And what you want to do is anchor hope to you, Oh yeah, Bruce mentioned, it was Rubenstein said, I don't sell cosmetics or makeup, I sell hope in a bottle, right? How powerful is that? Do you ever see an anti-aging thing on television and it's always this 27-year-old young lady and you're like, I don't think she needs wrinkle cream. Look at my skin. To me, that's like the 28-year-old professional bodybuilder going to show Reed how to work out, right? Well, I don't know. Has he blown out both knees and maybe a hip? But they're selling hope, which kind of makes sense, right? It actually makes sense. So can you sell the hope? And if they feel it, they'll justify it. Because they're like, well, maybe this will work for me. Maybe this anti-aging wrinkle cream, which I just bought some, by the way. But, it's like, I hope it's going to work. I'm not immune to this stuff, right? And, and then, positively hallucinate that it's working for you, hopefully. And you control the frame, right? You control the frame. There's a car guy on, I don't know how it came up in my feed. You ever notice this? Your feed, your algorithm that feeds your feed on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok is just like your reticular activating system, right? Whatever you give attention to in the real world, like, is what you're going to notice out there, right? If you decide you want to buy a BMW, right? You'll see BMWs everywhere. That's your reticular activating system. Well, your algorithm, the way we train it is you click on something and then suddenly you've all had that experience. You click on it once. Now that's all you're seeing, right? Just ad after ad after ad, right? Because you told it, it's just like your reticular activating system for that. But for some reason, I got onto this thing where I was getting all these things from a car guy. And he was showing you how to beat a car dealership, right? Maybe I'm presetting my own frame because I want to buy a different car. And I'm going to break down and buy probably a hybrid this time. But, he's talking about you control the situation with your first phone call. And as Russell Yarnell and I've heard Scott McFall say too, it's the first phone call where you set how it's going to go with that client. Right? So Billy calls me up. Hey, yeah, I saw you if I was running. If you saw my social media ad, I almost said newspaper ad. That would really be dating myself. Yeah, and I just want to know, like, how much is the weight loss thing? Well, that's a good question. To decide if hypnosis is right for you and whether I can accept you as a client, I need you to come in for a free screening. All right? And it starts setting I just want to know how much. Well, I can't really tell you that ethically because I don't know what you need till you come in. So would you like, it only takes 15 minutes. It's fun. Morning or afternoon. Of course, you could do this on Zoom now too. And it sets the frame, right? And the guy was doing that training and he goes, because I guarantee you, if you give a price, you're never going to get that guy as a client or that lady as a client, right? Because there's no reference to what the price is, right? And so you lose the control of the frame of what's going on. And again, you're changing their location. They're coming to your office or they're coming onto your Zoom. I just had this with somebody who wanted to coach. I was reaching out for it. And I'm like, okay, I'll send you a link, Zoom link. And thank God I was getting ready to teach this. And they go, no, I'll just send you my link. And I go, nope, I do everything on my Zoom link. Right? And they decided not to. They go, no, I want to do mine. I said, nope. Well, who's going to control the entire interaction after that? Right? So anyway, it was kind of fun. But yeah, it's like you control the frame. Right? So next week, we'll talk about an interesting thing like how you develop your personality. Right? What really drives personality, right? And that's your identity. And how to really do that quicker. And it's the untold secrets of Neville Goddard. Right? So it's going to be cool. It's going to be cool. That's next week, which also will be on Wednesday, the day my show opens. So I'll probably be in a good mood, or absolutely terrified if I'm still like, not know all my lines. Every actor's terrifying moment. Okay. But once you begin to guide it, you control the outcome. Right. And this is true in, all the situations. So I hope you enjoyed that. If you liked it, go to hortonpsychology.com if you have any questions. And again, those watching, if you want the free thing on pre-suasion, just shoot me a direct message wherever you're watching this, YouTube, or just email me on my website, and I'll get that to you. Have a great day. So you train like a performer to be an elite public speaker. That's coming up soon. Again, if you like this kind of stuff, the thing to avoid is boring people with facts. The things to do is tell a story and excess emotion. That influences people. Wherever you're watching this, make sure you subscribe, and please leave a comment and tell everyone around it. I'm looking forward to hearing from you. HortonPsychology.com.